Welcome to Disinformation. I'm Richard Metzger. Each year in the United States, 23,000 children vanish from their homes. Grave sites are vandalized while churches are burned to the ground. Who are the shadowy figures behind these activities? In our first story tonight, Disinformation takes you deep undercover for an incredible but true look at satanic cults in America today. Since the dawn of the human species, man has wrestled with the dark side of human nature. Sometimes the dark side has won the battle for our souls. This evil has been known by different names. In ancient Egypt, there were those who worshipped Set, the demon of death and destruction. And in modern-day Southern California, there were those who worshipped Satan, the prince of lies.
I love evil, and I love evil actions.
Those who are true Satanists do evil things. We at least want evil.
What I did in the ritual was form a pact with the devil and kind of dedicated my life formally to that path.
Satan does exist, and he is very real and very powerful.
I remember strangling the dog with a wire. I dedicated that sacrifice to Satan.
Former FBI Special Agent Ted Gunderson has been investigating modern Satanism for over 20 years. He spoke to us about the growing problem of satanic cults.
Southern California is a pivotal area for satanic cult activity in America. Cults are much stronger than people realize. I would estimate there's in excess of 3 million in the United States alone.
Since the death in 1997 of Church of Satan founder Anton LaVey, a number of satanic splinter groups have sprung up, spreading their message through the internet. The leaders of these groups have recently joined forces, calling themselves the Syndicate of the 5 Points. Our satanic reporter Brian Butler has extensively researched this inner circle.
Who are the main members of this group?
Clergyman Behemoth, Spook, Desecration, Pele, and Magister Brian Knowles.
Which one of them's the leader?
Definitely Knowles.
There are so-called satanic leaders who have been identified in America today. But if you interview them one-on-one, they say, we don't break the law. We don't commit human sacrifices. Or we're not involved in sex orgies, prostitution, dope, or any of these things. We just worship Satan in a nice, peaceful manner.
Shimham Porash. Shimham Porash.
What they
Modern man perceives time as a linear progression with a fixed past, present, and future. The Maya, on the other hand, understood time as something more fluid, and they believed that periods of time would be repeated through a series of world ages. The Maya were far from unique in their understanding of time as repeating cycles. In fact, many cultures around the world have had similar ideas about world ages, with highs and lows, beginnings and endings, apocalypse and renewal.
When my book came out in 1998, Maya Cosmogenesis 2012, it sort of begged the question of whether or not these profound insights of the Maya were known to other world traditions. And so I took the whole galactic alignment thesis on a world tour and looked at other traditions. Basically, it does seem that the astronomical cycles and the galactic alignment information is deeply encoded in Western traditions.
Mythologies, legends, everywhere from Asia to Americas to Europe to Africa, talk about periods of catastrophic dissolution of advanced civilizations, of civilizations in general.
A lot of indigenous cultures around the world have a kind of coherent understanding of what this time means. So the Hopi in Arizona talk about this as being the transition from the 4th world to the 5th world, according to their oral prophecies. And then the classical Mayan civilization, they put forth the idea that 2012 is the end of a great cycle.
So you can look at Mithraism, you can look at Egypt, you can look at Islamic astrology, with the doctrine of the lunar nodes. It almost seems like this galactic alignment information is a very ancient idea.
It's really hard to look at any ancient mythological system without realizing that they thought in cyclical terms, not in linear terms. So literally, as we would put it today, what goes around comes around.
Hello and welcome to what we hope will be the first of many annual Disinfo.con events. I'm Richard Metzger. Welcome to the Hammerstein Ballroom. For those of you from out of town, welcome to New York. And the people from New Zealand, Sweden, and Dublin, you know who you are. You rock for coming this far for this thing. So thanks very much. Welcome. Paraphrasing Aleister Crowley in his book, The Intelligence Agents, Timothy Leary wrote that there are 3 ways to increase your intelligence. First, continually expand the scope, source, and intensity of the information you receive. Second, develop external networks for increasing intelligence. In particular, spend your time with people as smart or smarter than you are. And third, constantly revise your reality maps and seek new metaphors for the future. And that, dearly beloved, is what we are gathered for here today. And I have a prediction to make. Before we leave, we're all going to get a little bit smarter. We're all going to mutate just a little bit. Think of the day as a kind of initiation, or as a sort of magical rite of passage. Energies will be raised today that will be hard to forget about or to put down when you go back to work next week. In the next 11 hours, the speakers appearing on this stage will be messing with your head, playing with your files, and committing random acts of higher revolutionary mutation. Don't worry, it'll be painless, and we hope it's going to be very entertaining. The 20th century has just been bookended. The revolutionary memes spread in the last century by Crowley, Allen Ginsberg, William Burroughs, Leary, Abbie Hoffman, and some of our speakers here today have been internalized by a large segment of the population. And in the new millennium, these thought forms will become fully externalized in the culture. When disinformation launched at the end of 1996, fewer than 20 corporations controlled over 90% of the major media outlets. At that time, I described the need for an antidote to the corporate control of the major media outlets. But with the advent of the Internet, the incredible number of new magazines on the stands, and new cable television networks starting up every month, this is no longer really the case. Just 3 years later, there are a lot of new companies jumping into the entertainment and infotainment arenas. New voices and different opinions are being heard. In the new media climate, diversity is inevitable, and the lock these 20 corporations previously had on consensus reality is a thing of the past. Those companies are still around, but they've been forced to share their media monopoly with a lot of competition. Whoever controls what you see controls what you think, but our reality is no longer based on what they tell us. With the new media tools we all have at our disposal, all of us with the inclination to make our voices and opinions heard loudly can now more fully participate in the debate. Think about it. There is more free speech today than there has ever been at any point before in history. Very simply, the need to fill hundreds of television channels and radio stations and movie theaters and newspapers and magazines with content caused consensus reality, fed to excess, to burst like a piñata. But the modern revolutionary doesn't necessarily want to bring the system down or destroy capitalism. Far from it. In a society where capital is king and when every fucking dipshit with a .com is making bank, like they are printing cash in the cellar, and many of them are, the point should be to get as close to that AOL, Time Warner, AT&T, CNN, CBS, ABC, NBC, RCA money as you possibly can get. If they will give, you should grab and not think twice. The truly up-to-date rebel rouser wisely seeks the path of least resistance and subverts from within. The multinational media corporations need people like us to make their software, write their articles, and produce their television shows. Smell an opportunity for mischief? I do. Today's aspiring modern now-a-go-go rebel should take a page from the book of Simpsons creator Matt Groening, or Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the guys behind South Park, or Marilyn Manson. The most subversive thing anyone can do is become popular. There is no point in having a feeble voice if you don't have to. If a tree falls in the forest and no one sends out a press release to the media, it didn't happen. Obscurity isn't admirable. It isn't anything but obscure. If your message is packaged in a sexy, funny, and interesting way, people will listen. The days of throwing Molotov cocktails and getting beaten up by cops, although Seattle did look like fun, is out. The days of living in a penthouse apartment, driving a Lexus, and beating your enemies at their own game is in. Have your cake and throw it too, in other words. Don't complain about the media, become the media. Ladies and gentlemen, I have seen the Illuminati, and it is us.
Welcome back. Later in the show, we'll tell you about the sex life of robots. But first, scientist Duncan Laurie built his glass and steel laboratory on the coast of Rhode Island. Here, Duncan conducts experiments that test the limits of human perception. I went to his lab where he demonstrated plant communication and the astonishing and outlawed science of radionics.
Duncan Laurie is an award-winning glass and metal artist. From his incredible workspace come laboratory located on a lush peninsula off the coast of Jamestown, Rhode Island, Laurie experiments with some astonishing electronic devices. On a beautiful summer day, he explained what the science of radionics was all about.
These are radionics devices and a short history of radionics device. This is called a pathoclast. Photographs of fields were placed on the device. Certain times they would actually cross out some of the crops. If there were bugs on the crops and they wanted to use pesticides, they'd place a pesticide on the photograph. They'd put it in the device. They'd push the button and boom, they do this 4 or 5 times a day. They measurably reduced the predation on the fields, even selectively, row by row. This is a matter of historical authenticity, as unbelievable as it sounds. What you have here is what's called a specimen well. Into this, you would put a representation of whatever it is you're working on. If it was a person, it could be a blood sample. It could be a photograph. It could be anything that indicated what it was that you wanted to work on.
When you say it can be a blood sample or a photograph, a blood sample is straightforward. I get that. I understand that. Why a photograph?
Well, anything, blood sample contains DNA. For some reason, a Polaroid, where you have both the positive and the negative image of the whatever it is you're using, for some reason it works. I don't think anybody knows why a photograph would work, but we know this because this device was extensively tested by the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture in the 50s, prior to all of this stuff being outlawed. This is where the discussion gets very cryptic and very surreal. It's also true that the mafias use these things. I mean, I talked to a couple of investigators who said they had consulted with the FBI in cases where devices of this kind, especially that powerful one, were used in potential murders. It's a cult technology, and until they find out how it works, and then it becomes mainstream
science
technology, right?
Yeah.
But for our purposes, sure they are.
You're listening to the sound of plants communicating.
Back in the 70s, there was a lot of research about plant consciousness, and some of this had to do with the fact that plants reacted to signals that were coming from other plants, and these could be detected very much like the sensors we have here. In fact, Clive Baxter was a man who had it was a lie detector equipment, wired plants up, found that one plant that wasn't wired up would react to harm that the plant that was hooked up and vice versa. So you had this plant symbiosis of signals, something like perhaps it's some field phenomena happening between plants. He even went so far as to hook up shrimp that were on a timer, and at a certain point the shrimp would fall into scalding water, and the scalding water, they would die immediately, and the plant on the electroencephalogram would go, rah! You know, just the signal would go crazy. They'd be screaming, essentially, feeling the demise of the shrimp. I'm thinking that it's possible that by running these signals through audio processors, sophisticated ones, that we're revealing more of what's in the signal, not just adding something to a simple pitch shift, because of the fact that there's a complex biology involved, that we're opening that signal up. The more it opens up, the more it seems the plants want to do. The more range you give them of expression, the more they seem to work with that range and produce an incredible deeper effects, just like there. All of a sudden I'm talking about it, and the next thing we know, the thing's boosting itself right up. You know, so there's this funny reciprocity between the plant and the operator and whatever else is going on in the room. You put on some music, all of a sudden they seem to be pegging themselves to the music. Is that a magnetic phenomena, or is that a biological phenomena? I can't say, you know, but it's wild to see it. These things are also interacting with other invisible realms. I mean, how do I know that there isn't, a gnome living in that tree that's taking advantage of this to express itself, you see? What this stuff is a way of looking at a technology which keeps it a little bit out of like the ego potential of the operator to amass personal power and then do, various different things with it for personal gain. This is sort of more oriented towards how does the technology, how can it be used in a creative context? You say, how do you want to use this to produce art? Can you move weather with it? Can you affect crops? Could you do something with this artistically that would be like a crop circle? You see, where certain amount of the field you treat, certain amount you don't. It's in the design. Now, if somebody did that using this technology, it would wake up millions of people to the potential of what this kind of energy is. The Indians and the Native American people did this a lot, but we don't view it through that lens. We view it through a cultural lens and as part of the technical level that they had at that time when they were working with bows and arrows and hide and everything else. We say, well, it's got to be on that level, can't be more sophisticated. Until you look at the fact that information is being used here in a subtle way, coupled with earth energy. So imagine that symbol is a personal intention that this individual, as an operator, is using on a highly active spot on the landscape, energetically, to broadcast his intention to affect the condition of that he wants to improve. He has some suffering. There's lack of water, so they go to these places, they hammer one into the wall, they put this prayer into it, and all of a sudden you have an energetic change. You have a rainstorm coming in. I saw this happen in the Hopi Pueblos. Every year the snake dance would be performed in an area where they have 6 to 8 inches of rainfall a year. Within 20 minutes of the finishing of the dance, the weather was coming in, it was raining. You can't tell me that's just coincidence. So somehow they're using directed intention through design, through art, coupling it with physical energy, subtle energy of some kind, and making things happen. Why aren't we doing that? We're supposed to be so advanced, How come our artists are sitting around making, these self-reflective, metaphorical pieces that are just basic commodities?
Hi, I'm Gary Baddeley, President of the Disinformation Company, known to some of you as the publisher of books and films featuring some of the authors here at this International Conference on Ancient Studies in Dubai. In 2008, I attended the inaugural International Conference on Ancient Studies, which featured some amazing speakers talking about the mysteries of ancient civilizations, including some with whom I'd worked professionally, such as Robert Bauval and John Major Jenkins. One of the most fascinating presentations was made by Boston University geologist Robert Schoch, whom I had met previously, but this was the first time we had had an opportunity to discuss our professional interests directly. A little over a year later, Robert and I mounted a short but action-packed expedition to Easter Island, known locally as Rapa Nui, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. This film is a brief introduction to our findings. It was not filmed or produced professionally, but we hope it will give you a sense of how excited we were by what we found.
The huge stone heads at Easter Island are emblematic of ancient mysteries. I've spent much of my career as a geologist looking at ancient megalithic monumental structures around the world, perhaps most famously the Great Sphinx in Egypt. And as part of what I've been looking at and tying in with the general theme of my research, I really wanted to see the ancient statues, the moai, these huge heads and torsos on Easter Island. Absolutely fascinating to me as I studied the statues on the island were the varying degrees of erosion and the varying degrees to which they were buried in natural sediment. Not all of them are eroded to the same extent, not all are buried to the same extent in natural sediment. And I start asking myself, well, what kind of geological processes are going on here? Is it consistent throughout the island? Are there different geological processes in parts of the island versus other parts? And could we start to study these systematically to try to get a good feel, a good handle on the varying dates of different moai? I became convinced that not all of them were carved at approximately the same time, that there's probably a large stretch of time between the earliest and the latest moai, and I think this is a type of issue that could be addressed systematically by further detailed geological research.
Robert and I were lucky enough to be introduced to not one, but two former governors of Easter Island, and through them we were able to meet and hear some of the Rapa Nui mythology and oral history that hints at some alternative explanations of the moai.
The native Easter Islanders, known as the Rapa Nui people, have a rich store of oral legends, traditions, history, mythology, and many conventional archaeologists, they may listen to it, but for the most part they dismiss such oral and traditional mythologies and religions. I actually find in my research that's very important to not take everything literally, but on the other hand not to dismiss it, to really listen intently, read, and see if there might be some kind of factual basis to some of these oral traditions and mythologies.
Robert had spent some time before we arrived on the island researching the legend of the giants, and found an account in the National Museum report for 1889 in the Smithsonian Archives recounting the experiences of the island's first recorded European visitor, the Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen, who encountered it on Easter Sunday, 1722. One of his crew, Behrens, described the men as averaging 12 feet high, so we were very interested in learning more from the modern-day Rapa Nui.
I believe that we should at least consider the accounts of the early explorers, the early discoverers of Easter Island. So, for instance, in the 18th century, among the earliest explorers of Easter Island discussed such things as so-called giants. They discussed meeting people that were 12 feet tall. At least the males were 12 feet tall, the women were 10 feet tall. Now, are these just tall tales, literally, or was there maybe some truth to it? Was there perhaps a relic population that was fairly large, even so-called giants on the island? I can't say that for certain there were because we don't yet have physical evidence of such a thing, but is that a possibility? I don't think we should dismiss it outright. For instance, just recently, little hobbits, so-called hobbits, very small skeletons of a distinct species of humanoid, has been found in Indonesia, and sure enough, the Dutch in the 18th century had described stories of very small people inhabiting the islands, and maybe now we have physical evidence for them. According to the earliest recorded native Easter Island traditions, the island was actually populated not by one group of people, but initially by two groups of settlers. These are sometimes referred to as the long ears and the short ears. And according to the early traditions, the long ears first arrived at the island. It was the long ears who actually started the monumental stone sculptures, that they built the moai, and initiated that entire practice. According to some traditions, the long ears were distinguished by their long extended earlobes. According to one interpretation, they may have been actually bigger and larger overall, perhaps even, quote, giants, unquote.
Another fascinating part of the local mythology involves the use of mana to move the giant moai.
The Easter Island moai are absolutely magnificent. They're huge, carved structures. They're carved out of solid rock. The largest erected moai are about 10 meters or 33 feet tall. They've been estimated, the large ones, to weigh up to 75 tons or more. And how the Easter Islanders did this is absolutely startling and enigmatic. They even had bigger plans, actually. In the quarry, you can observe an unfinished moai, and that unfinished moai is on the order of 21 meters long, about 69 feet, and estimated to weigh over 250 tons. How they erected these, how they carved them, is still a mystery. If you ask the native Easter Islanders how it was done, as Europeans have asked for the last 200 plus years, they don't give you a, quote, rational Western explanation. They say it was done by mana, that the statues walked to their locations, or that it was simply mana. And what they mean by that is sort of a supernatural or spiritual, or we might call psychic force, that moved, somehow transported the statues. So this is not very satisfying to the Western imagination, to the Western mind perhaps, and to conventional archaeologists, and they simply dismiss the concept of mana as, nonsense, religious nonsense. But I have to wonder, does it mask something else, something that we don't know?
Another mystery relates to the few moai that are carved from basalt.
The vast majority of moai were carved from volcanic tuffs, a relatively soft, all other things considered, volcanic rock. A few of the moai, however, are carved from basalt, a much harder material, much more difficult to work, but it lasts much longer. Now, when it comes to the moai carved out of volcanic tuffs, we saw the quarry. We explored it carefully, and it's very clear where the huge moai of volcanic tuff come from. But when it comes to the basaltic moai, which are much rare on the island, it's not clear where they were quarried, where they were carved. I would expect geologically that, all other things being equal, basaltic quarries would be lower in the section, maybe along the coast, maybe even so far along the coast that they're now underwater. Now this would be very interesting if we found basalt quarries that are now under the water, because we know that water levels have risen over the last few thousand years since the end of the last ice age, and any flooded basalt quarries, that would suggest, if they're flooded, that they are extremely old.
Our team knew of earlier research by leading French explorer Jacques Cousteau that might lend support for Robert's speculative ideas about the underwater quarries.
Jacques Cousteau and his divers spent some time around Easter Island, and they are said to have found under the water some strange, very rectangular, what were described as rectangular holes or cavities in the basalt rocks. One thing that comes to my mind is whether they had actually discovered quarries under the ocean along the coast of Easter Island. So this is something I would very much like to explore. If in fact they discovered ancient quarries that are now buried by the sea, this would suggest that those quarries were incredibly old, that they were old enough that they have been inundated, they have been covered over by rising sea levels since the last ice age. And depending on how deep they are and what their geologic context is, we might be able to date them.
In such a short trip, it was inevitable that we would only begin to chip away at some of the mysteries of the island, leaving us all with a great sense of excitement at the prospect of a return trip.
As a geologist, I was fascinated by the volcanic structures on the island, in particular the caves on the island. There's lots of natural caves. I only had a short time to explore a couple of them, and I think these are worth looking at much more closely. It's known, according to the traditions, that the caves were used by people both to live in, to store goods, to perhaps bury the dead, and exploring the caves, looking at them very closely, I think could shed a lot more information on the origins and the history of Easter Island. Some of the little islands, the little islets they're called, off of the main island, they're tiny, smaller than an acre perhaps, but they have natural caves on them. One of those little islets we got to very briefly. I was able to explore for about 10 minutes. I found some caves, but I could not get into them. I just didn't have the time. So it's these types of things I would like to be able to go back and look at much more definitively.
What Robert didn't mention was that visiting the islet was not easy. That's me in the orange hat, holding onto Robert's arms as he dangles in the water. The good news is that he did get onto the islet with no damage, and what he found left us eager to return.
On a return trip to Easter Island, I would really like to be able to look for what I'll call the missing basalt quarries. There are some moai that are carved out of basalt, but no one seems to really know where the quarries for this basalt are. This is not insignificant. Perhaps, and there's some suggestions to this effect, perhaps those basalt quarries are along the coast, but now flooded, now underwater, under the sea level. And if so, this suggests that maybe they're much older. So looking for those missing basalt quarries, which would involve some diving, and I know how to dive, this is something I would very much like to do on a return trip to Easter Island.
There is far more to what we found as we explored the remote and inaccessible corners of Rapa Nui. But before these can responsibly be announced to the public, we do need to verify our findings and make sure that all possible explanations and assumptions have been examined. We very much hope to obtain funding to return to pursue these and other fascinating findings on Rapa Nui. One last thing that I should reveal now was that we witnessed the first wedding of 2010 on Easter Island. And it was the marriage of our very own Robert Schock and his fiancée, Katie Ulysses.
The Mayan shamans, or spiritual leaders, used hallucinogenic plants and substances to enter an altered state from which they were able to bring back wisdom and knowledge, enabling them to interpret their heavenly observations.
Izapa really was a kind of new world Eleusis. In the old world, Eleusis was a place where seekers were initiated into the sacred mysteries. And at Izapa, initiates, those seeking knowledge, were brought through a process of understanding this new galactic cosmology. And clearly, sacred plants was part of this. We know that ritual mushroom stones were found in the region around Izapa, so we know that there was a kind of mushroom cult going on there. And we also know that dimethyltryptamine is a powerful hallucinogenic that can be harvested from the glands of the bufo toad. And Stela 6 at Izapa, for example, depicts the bufo toad, and it actually shows the toad's glands with vision scrolls coming out of the glands. This actually indicates a very clear proof that they were aware of the vision-producing effects of the gland secretions. So it's very clear that Azapa was an initiatory center that utilized hallucinogenic plants and substances in order to facilitate expansion of consciousness so that larger perspectives could be embraced.
The Inca, the Hopi, the Mayans were all shamanic cultures, and they entered into altered states of awareness in order to access this body of wisdom, which is infinite. So to do that, they had to step outside of ordinary time, which is the opportunity we all have today as we come to the end of time, is to step into infinity, to step into this body of ancient wisdom.
We can learn from ancient civilizations, and so I hope I've played some part in reintroducing the wisdom of the ancient world to the modern world, and helping people to open their eyes and open their ears and hear what the ancients have to say to us. And more recently also the recognition that the shamans of tribal and hunter-gatherer societies around the world, with their systems and techniques for contacting the spirit realm directly, also have a great deal to teach us. So, you know, I would advocate a kind of reversal of the normal order of things. It's not we in our scientific and technological world, where everything is rooted and grounded in a material and mechanistic view of the universe. It is not we who may place ourselves above the civilizations of antiquity. We may not say that we are greater than or better than the shaman in a small village in the Amazon. Those civilizations of antiquity and those tribal shamans today have a huge amount to teach us, and we can only recover the better part of ourselves if we are willing to listen to what they have to say. So I suppose that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to say this that came before, this knowledge of the spirit world that shamans still possess today, this is what really matters about us. Let's listen to it.
Sacred plants will give you access. They'll give you access to these domains, but that's the easy way. Shamanic training is very rigorous. It demands that you spend time in nature and vision quest, and not just increase the serotonin levels in your brain so you can experience the divine for a fleeting moment and then come back into a life that is hell. So you have to be willing to pay your dues, to do the work, to spend time in nature, to spend time with yourself, and not just increase the levels of dopamine or certain brain chemicals that stimulate bliss. The psychedelics have opened the doors for many people in the West, but opening the doors and walking through them are very different things.
You're about to meet a Woodland Hills, California housewife who discovered she was leading a terrifying double life. A warning, what you're about to see may leave you sickened, stunned, and outraged. But one thing's certain, you'll never forget the story of Bryce Taylor.
My name is Bryce Taylor, and I'm a 48-year-old native Californian. Until 1995, I suffered from a debilitating condition known as multiple personality disorder. In 1985, I embarked on the long and tedious, painful road to recovery. Through years of therapy and deprogramming, I completely reintegrated my multiple personalities back into my uniform core self, and through the grace of God, I am alive today to convey to you my true life experiences. This account of my remembrances will be so shocking and amazing that you may feel that you've entered the twilight zone. Until 1985, really, I thought I was living a perfect life. I thought I had a perfect childhood. I thought I had, perfect parents and family, and that my family that I married was perfect. It couldn't have been farther from the truth. My multiple personality condition resulted from what I had first thought in 1986 was solely sexual and ritual abuse. But as I began to remember and heal more of my hidden past, I realized that ritual abuse was merely the mind control, trauma base my pedophile father and others used to condition me for participation in Project Monarch, the Central Intelligence Agency's white slavery operation. Mind control sex slaves are created by starting with a child from birth and inducing trauma, which for me was done in the form of being sexually abused and then being satanically abused within a church, and then also at home where I was put through a trial of satanic rituals, which means there were blood rituals done where I was forced to witness animals and people being sacrificed. And then things such as in the church, I was sexually abused by the minister there. And a lot of it was a cover for pornography and then child prostitution that looked like I was going to choir practice, but once the doors were closed to the area where we did that, we were taken down in the basement, and it turned into kiddie porn where we were being filmed.
I was an FBI agent for 27.5 years. At the time of my retirement, I was the senior special agent in charge of the FBI Los Angeles Division. I have been qualified in the courts as an expert on cults and satanic ritual abuse. I'd have to say that Bryce Taylor's story has been confirmed over and over again through my various sources. I also have contacts on the inside of the U.S. intelligence community. I have information from various sources that judges, law enforcement, prosecutors, attorneys, doctors, and many, many prominent individuals, including actors, actresses, professional football and baseball players, are involved in these type activities.
After I fled from California, I began having vivid, detailed memories of being used as a sex slave to some of our nation's highest level government officials. Among them were John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Baines Johnson, Nelson Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, and top entertainment professionals such as my owner, Bob Hope. The truth is that there are slave auctions that very elite people attend to be able to own and buy the best mind control slaves that money can buy. Frank Sinatra was Bob Hope's friend, and he actually was the person that was in charge of me a lot when I was in Las Vegas on assignment. I would be taken there to be prostituted to Elvis or to some of the other entertainers there during the shows. Dean Martin, Bing Crosby, Sammy Davis Jr., and all types of different situations. And I would be taken to different parties where they were at, where then I was prostituted, or they would make some pornography or something. The theme of the pornography filmed by Sylvester Stallone was sex with dolphins, and he was filming a lot of these young girls with the dolphins, and that was actually pornography that was shared with a lot of people later on. They filmed us over years with all sorts of animals. I mean, it was gross. There was a film that was made when Kelly was a very little girl. It was called Mommy and Me, and it was, just incestual themes of all sorts of interfamilial sex. And during the time all this was happening, I was under total mind control, and so was Kelly. We didn't even know this was going on. We were just puppeted like robots to do these things. I know that some of my perpetrators were actually known Satanists, and some of them were not. I know that Sammy Davis Jr. actually painted his little fingernail with red nail polish and was actually part of a satanic group.
How does satanic ritual abuse play into all of these prominent people being involved in this stuff?
If you go back 220 25 or 30 years ago, you have what we call the Illuminati that was established in 1776. And the goals of the Illuminati, this is all very well documented, are to take over the world. One of the best ways of taking over the world is to control people's minds and to take over a country through the control of the minds. So what's happening in America, and based on my research and my interviews with numerous individuals, is that the powers that be, the higher-ups, the people in the Illuminati, are using the satanic cults as a means and as a tool to condition individuals and to make them victims of the mind control, MK Ultra mind control program. There's probably close to 4 million practicing Satanists in the United States alone, based on my intelligence information.
Why was it that the Queen of England saw you as being the perfect candidate for genetic engineering?
In a series of meetings that took place before Reagan was president, he took me to England where we had private meetings with the Queen. During those meetings, I overheard them talking about my genetic structure and the bloodline that would house that genetic bloodline. And she was very interested in having Ronald Reagan be the father of that child. They decided that I would be impregnated for later breeding within the royal family. It's an experience that still causes me a lot of pain, and although I was under mind control and wasn't really aware of this for years, consciously, the full ramifications of this, I had thoughts about this baby, and I was depressed, and I was sad, and I wanted him back, and I cried for months afterwards. They kept saying that this would further American diplomatic relations with the UK, and that I was serving my country at the highest levels by making this contribution. But the truth is, it was not my choice, and I didn't make a willing contribution of my own child. And I'm hoping that my child, my son, will know who he is and will wake up.
If the Queen would be watching this show right now, what is a message that you would want to give to her?
I would just like to tell the Queen of England that whether a person's under mind control or not, that no one has a right to take a child from someone, and that if she didn't know I was under mind control, that I would, understand, but that, I would just appeal to her as a mother and ask for her cooperation in this situation, that I could be at least reunited with my son.
In the mid-1980s, painter Joe Coleman exploded onto the New York art scene. Literally.
From performance art and underground comics, Joe Coleman has emerged as this generation's answer to Salvador Dali, mixing a flair for theatrics with a technique that borders on the obsessive. Wielding his brush like a scalpel, Coleman performs autopsies on the psyches of serial killers, historical figures, and Joe's favorite subject, himself.
You have to make friends with the enemy. You have to digest a certain amount of the dark side in order to survive. You can look at my paintings from a distance, you have a good idea of like a graphic scene, but then as you get closer, you see more, and closer, and you see more and more. It's like worlds within worlds within worlds.
Coleman works with a single horsehair brush, creating details that are nearly microscopic.
I've had collectors that have had paintings for years, and all of a sudden, one day I'll get a call and they'll say, "Joe, I just discovered this thing I never saw in the painting. I've been looking at it every day." That's kind of fun for me to hear it, because it's all there if you're willing to look. I'm only giving you hints on how to look, and the more that you put into it, the more that you're going to get out of it, in the same way that I'm making the painting. The only thing that I'm concerned about is the detail, because the detail leads me to the soul. Step right up. Hurry, hurry, hurry.
Step inside Joe's gallery of the weird and unusual, a collection he calls the Auditorium.
The auditorium consists of both saints and sinners. We have here a lock of someone's hair. It's Charlie Manson. This is a reliquary that contains a piece of Jesus Christ. Supposedly it's the bone marrow. So if we take this, we take Charlie Manson's lock of hair, we put them together, we have a Cupid doll. We can clone the perfect deity. That's St. Agnes. St. Agnes refused to have sex with the Roman soldiers, and they raped and killed her. Supposedly, underneath the wax is the real saint. If you look closely at her hands, you'll see that they contain real human bone. Her hair is real human hair. It's got real human teeth.
Where do you purchase the remains of St. Agnes?
Came with the apartment. Now you can't buy this stuff. It has to do with a passion about acquiring it. That's how it starts. Eventually it gets to the point where the stuff comes to you. A lot of these things want to be here whether I want them to be here or not, because they know that they're going to be honored here. It's almost like they're telling each other there's a party at Joe's house and they have to come here in order to be respected. Here's Johnny Cash with these Siamese twins, one of my favorite musicians. And here's my favorite actress, Jane Mansfield, with an autograph that says, "With love to my favorite artist, Jane." And here's Whitney and I always like to be able to have a place to look at Whitney at.
Every Gomez needs his Morticia, and Coleman's found his in photographer Whitney Ward.
When my dad first met you, he said, "Oh my God, I didn't know there were two of you in the world."
Right.
The story of their courtship is told in the painting, Love Song.
I mean, it's called Love Song because that's what it is. You know, it's a love song in paint. It has our first date, you know, in this bar, and we were sucking on each other's fingers, and that was like one of the first images that appeared in the painting.
It really took a while to unfold. It didn't start as a portrait of us. He didn't say one day, "Oh, I'm doing a portrait of us," and, you know, kind of developed really naturally like our relationship did.
Inspired by the museums of Venice, Joe added a few personal touches to each corner of the painting.
One of them contains a cyst that I removed from my own neck, mixed with Whitney's blood. Each reliquary contains different body parts of us that are commingled. And then it's mounted on a bed sheet that we fucked on. So it has, you know, so many, like, both, you know, magical and narrative elements in it. Junior's my adopted son, and experience of getting Junior.
Proudest day of your life.
Yeah, well, it was a very proud day. I was in Coney Island, and I was walking past a sideshow, and all of a sudden I heard somewhere in the background, "Hey, Joe!" And I was like, well, there's, you know, probably 5,000 people named Joe in Coney Island, yeah, so I just kept walking. Then I hear, "Hey, Joe Coleman!" I'm like, what? So I turn around, and I see this character by one of the banners, and he's going, "Hey, Joe, you want to buy a pickled punk?" It's like, what? So I walk over to the guy. I knew what a pickled punk was, because that's old Carney slang for a baby in a jar, usually deformed. It sounded really interesting. So he brings me behind the canvas banner and brings me into this little trailer, goes behind a curtain, and pulls out this little darling. And immediately, you know, I fell in love with him. I just gave him what he asked for and took little Junior home on the subway.
Junior has quite a photo album going on, too. He has pictures taken with every single one of his friends that comes over.
There's so much fear about the end of the world. And actually, the world ends when I die. And so the book of Revelations, to me, is actually about my death. And I had to interpret, you know, the end of my days and how I would deal with that. And it actually became one of the only paintings that I ever made that had a happy ending.
Everybody's smiling through the apocalypse, aren't they?
Yeah, because it's actually the day that the guilty are punished and that our family is rewarded for all their good deeds.
Joe asked for photographs of all my enemies, and I said, well, I can only really think of 1 or 2 people I'd want to send to hell. And he goes, think harder.
Whitney and I ride the beast. He's kind of like a lawnmower, like chopping up all of our enemies. And we are leaving behind the world in flames. Whitney has the scales, and I have the Book of Revelations open to this very image in the Book of Revelations. Then I took the entire Book of Revelations in miniature, which was blessed by a Catholic priest, and I mounted it all along the frame, and I took out my blood and Whitney's blood with a syringe and stained all the pages from the Book of Revelations around the painting. And that's the force field that holds it all in.
Our next guest has spent the past 30 years inventing the future. You're about to meet a true 21st century Renaissance man, artist Paul Loeffele, who tells us how to build a working time machine and a house made entirely of plants.
Imagine the Buddha reincarnated as a mild-mannered, science fiction-obsessed architect, and you'll have an easier time understanding the enigma that is artist Paul Loeffele. Loeffele's futuristic blueprints take the viewer on a journey to the outer limits of metaphysical speculation, bridging consciousness and matter. Stare at one of them long enough, and an entirely new cosmos is revealed. As a child, Laffoley dreamt of a strange museum filled with alien life forms and biological machines. These surreal sculptures contemplated Paul as much as he contemplated them, maybe more so. Laffoley awoke from his dream with a mission, creating what some critics have called an authentic new art form.
I take cosmic themes and I turn them into finely detailed earthwork. And this is the reason why I like diagrams so much, because a diagram is a neutral system which can allow you to diagram anything. As an architect, I always appreciated that, because it's like drawing the floor plan of the building on the ground and then starting to build it. Mandalas are a type of diagram. So I think that the diagram-esqueness of them is the core. In that sense, this is another way of defining the word symbol. It's something that connects thinking and feeling. There's an epistemic ladder in symbolism, going from a sign, an index, an icon, an archetype, to a symbol. When you begin on the ladder, the knower is active and the knowledge is passive. That begins it. And so as you proceed from a sign to an index to an icon, when you get to like an archetype, you're moving to a point where you're recognizing that this is happening all around the world.
Paul, H.G. Wells' time machine is one of the few inventions from his science fiction work that hasn't been built yet. And you have plans to change that, don't you?
That's right. Most people consider that the sine qua non of science fiction, meaning that they feel that this will never leave the realm of science fiction. What most people do when they write science fiction now is that they're actually doing ad hoc research and development for some company that will exist the minute it's read. And that say like NASA used Star Trek, you know, they just took it right offline. And you know, like the communicator that Captain Kirk had is now the cell phone, you know, and all those various things. Given the idea of a time machine, I said it's overdue. So I came up with this idea right here, which I call a level gyre. And this is the main device. Every time you spin something on its own axis, you are altering the space-time around that, just slightly. But when you multiply it, you then have a time dilation, because it's a space-time dilation, which is highly exaggerated. Eternity has energy, but it doesn't involve motion, whereas time has energy that involves motion. So here is a device that allows a connection between time and eternity. What I have right here is the human soul embedded into a temporal dimensional system with the chakras. And as a result, you have a natural ability to anticipate the future or remember the past. The theory that I have is that if you can control and amplify pre- and retrocognition, pre-perception of the future and retroperception of the past, into an exaggerated form, that you will then fulfill the definition of time travel as Wells presents it in his novel.
Paul's vegetable house combines the principles of sacred geometry with living architecture. He's like Buckminster Fuller, with chlorophyll.
Paul, tell me about the vegetable house.
It's called Das Örpflanzerhaus in homage to the poet Goethe. The idea of a primordial plant, a plant from which all other plants come, was his idea. But biologically, he never found it. So it remained an idea. So I thought perhaps you could create the idea from the other way around, that if you actually grafted together all forms of vegetation across the surface of the earth, you would then have a single plant. And all of the different species would come to that. And people said, well, how the hell are you going to do that? I mean, it's possible to graft the same species to itself, but how would you cross-graft? In other words, go from another species.
How would you do it?
It's done by the ginkgo biloba. That was a tree, a flowering plant that was around during a little bit prior to the Jurassic period. So the dinosaurs ate that. And that what it does, it can literally connect conifer to deciduous trees, fruits to vegetables, vines to grasses. This is basically the plan of it. You see, these represent individual pine trees, and you graft the side branches together. So what you then have is a single plant with a multiple root system. Let's take a look at an elevation, side view. The pine trees are all planted in a mature state, because at this point I'm trying to create a new piece of vegetation which could potentially go to seed and have seeds, in the same way that, like, humans created the navel orange and the nectarine, and then finally, once that happened, the thing went to a seed so that you can create more in that way. With genetic engineering, you can increase the velocity of maturation, because you don't want to wait 50 years for one house. If we're talking about helping to solve the housing shortage, you can give a person a bag of seeds and have an entire house grow in 2 months. I think you're on the track to actually solving the low-cost housing problem.
And now to San Pedro, California, where we catch up with this Sleepy Harbor town's most notorious resident.
I am Rocket Boy, space mercenary of the universe. I destroy worlds and planets. I kill people and blow up their heads. Just because you pay me the most doesn't mean I will obey you.
Rocket Boy is an intergalactic warrior stranded on Earth after a freak radiation storm in outer space.
All the places I could have crash landed to, I crash landed on Earth to where I can't get off, because Earth technology ain't high enough for me to get off.
On Hama, there are cat people. On Dezo, they are reptiles. On Kalok, they are insects. There are no humans in my world at all.
So why I came out human is because I was born in a freak radiation storm. Normally I would come out as a cat person, except because of the freak radiation storm, I came out human looking.
And when we found him, he said he just parachuted from one of their spaceships, and that's where he landed. And it took him a couple of days before his body got the same type of a body that Earth people have.
Every superhero must have his arch nemesis. Meet Rocket Boy's upstairs neighbor, Captain Art.
Fuck you, Art. Fuck you, Art. Fuck you, Art.
When he goes to the toilet, sometimes he'll flush the toilet, sometimes he'll overflow the toilet. You give him a roll of toilet paper, I think he thinks you're supposed to use the whole roll on one shit. He's been nosing around in different people's yards, looking through windows. They don't have sex on his planet like the humans on Earth have sex. And he wanted to go ahead and look around, see what the Earth women really look like. I don't even know if he's got a dick or a pussy.
He doesn't believe anything. He believes man is man, and anything out in space ain't true. Everybody comes from Earth. If you're not from Earth, then you're crazy.
Unable to gain employment as a superhero, Rocket Boy does various odd jobs while he awaits his next mission.
I have done 2 porno films, and I have done 2 regular movies. Camp Erotica, that's the newest one. I played a mentally retarded gardener.
Do I get to touch him too?
I fucked a toy sheep and a can of cream corn.
And one of the cameramen was just joking with him, taking, you want to have some fun? Take this can of corn, cream corn, nice, oh, it's delicious corn.
You see my dick come out and go into it, then they cut the film, you wipe off the dick, put it back in your pants, put the corn back up to where your pants would be, and then pretend like you're fucking it. Except you're not actually fucking it.
And there he was, jacking off the can of corn. And did you know, he sat there and ate that goddamn can of corn. They shouldn't have named him Rocket Boy, they should have named him Rocket Nut. He murdered my poor innocent cat and thought it was funny.
Well, the cat story was one day I was living here and I woke up and went out and did my chores, and Art went out in the back and found a dead cat inside the one of the trash cans with shit on top of it. So I immediately, because I picked up dog shit, that immediately made me the cat killer.
I went out and started calling my kitty, 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 where you at? The neighbor looks over the fence, he says, you want to find your cat? And I said, yeah, what about my cat? He says, that nut put a pitchfork right through that cat.
And now I've been a cat killer ever since. And now every cat that dies anywhere around here, so I'm supposed to kill the cat going by Art.
And I still say he's a faggot, because he hangs around with weird guys and that there. I keep a 38 under my pillow, because I don't know if he's going to come in my building there.
We've never gotten along.
I am Rocket Boy.
Welcome to Disinformation. I'm Richard Metzger. Each year in the United States, 23,000 children vanish from their homes. Grave sites are vandalized while churches are burned to the ground. Who are the shadowy figures behind these activities? In our first story tonight, Disinformation takes you deep undercover for an incredible but true look at satanic cults in America today.
Since the dawn of the human species, man has wrestled with the dark side of human nature. Sometimes the dark side has won the battle for our souls. This evil has been known by different names. In ancient Egypt, there were those who worshipped Set, the demon of death and destruction. And in modern-day Southern California, there were those who worshipped Satan, the prince of lies.
I love evil, and I love evil actions. Those who are true Satanists do evil things. We at least want evil.
What I did in the ritual was form a pact with the devil and kind of dedicated my life formally to that path.
Satan does exist, and he is very real and very powerful. I remember strangling the dog with a wire. I dedicated that sacrifice to Satan.
Former FBI Special Agent Ted Gunderson has been investigating modern Satanism for over 20 years. He spoke to us about the growing problem of satanic cults.
Southern California is a pivotal area for satanic cult activity in America. Cults are much stronger than people realize. I would estimate there's in excess of 3 million in the United States alone.
Since the death in 1997 of Church of Satan founder Anton LaVey, a number of satanic splinter groups have sprung up, spreading their message through the internet. The leaders of these groups have recently joined forces, calling themselves the Syndicate of the 5 Points. Our satanic reporter Brian Butler has extensively researched this inner circle.
Who are the main members of this group?
Clergyman Behemoth, Spook, Desecration, Pele, and Magister Brian Knowles.
Which one of them's the leader?
Definitely Knowles.
There are so-called satanic leaders who have been identified in America today. But if you interview them one-on-one, they say, we don't break the law. We don't commit human sacrifices. Or we're not involved in sex orgies, prostitution, dope, or any of these things. We just worship Satan in a nice, peaceful manner.
Shimham Forash.
Shimham Forash.
But what they tell you and what they do are two different things.
Hi, welcome to Lucifer's Den. I'm Magister Brian Knowles. Come on in. Our home is nice. It's not the sinister type, stereotypical satanic home. You walk into some Satanist homes and they're decked out black, red, skulls all over the place or whatever. My home is a home. Come on actually into my personal lounge. This is Lucifer's Den. All in all, I guess I could say if there's one main office for our organization, this is it. This is my computer and my desk. This is where the actual Lucifer's Den website is made, updated, created, the whole 9 yards. I've got a pretty good sized backyard that we're actually going to set up for ritual use.
Come here.
And then in the desert, it gives us the ability to really do whatever we want to do.
Come here. Hi.
In addition to running Lucifer's Den, Magister Knowles recently found time to marry his Christian girlfriend on the Dreammaker TV show.
You're a Satanist and your wife is a Christian. How do other people in the satanic community feel about this?
I think that some people have had a problem with it. Not so much that they say, well, how could you dare do that? But I think that people more and more have found it to be really strange or really unique. My wife has come a very large way, and she has really opened her mind to accept what I am.
Satanism and Christianity don't mix. There are a number of people who claim they are Christian, who go to church, who are actually not Christians, and they're going to church as a cover for their satanic activity.
I've seen ghosts, I've seen apparitions, I've seen things move. I've seen some demons that I think were actually materializing in front of my eyes. My first satanic ritual was performed at the age of 13. It was a calling forth of Asmodeus, the Grand Duke of Hell. I guess my intent for calling forth the demon Asmodeus was basically power. I remember a very, very thick mist and something solid, yet without distinguished characteristics or features, appeared in front of me.
I've come here this day to call upon the forces of darkness.
The satanic cults are famous for subliminal messages. This would include, say, music at a roller rink.
Up for you right now, the latest from Britney Spears. This is Stronger.
It's a natural thing for people involved in the satanic movement to be attracted to a large group of kids for recruiting purposes. Let's say a roller skating rink where there's a lot of kids. Many of these kids are kidnapped, sold at auctions. Blue-eyed blonde hair will sell for $50,000. If you get in your car right now and drive down the street, I can point out a half a dozen subliminal messages on the billboards, in magazines, on television. I see them on television all the time.
It's time now to shake, roll, and roll out to the middle of the floor. It's time to loosen things up and do the hokey pokey.
So there is a parallel there between the subliminal messages, the music, the attraction to kids, or groups of children.
The overall thought of a Satanist being involved in an environment that deals primarily with kids and with families, they wouldn't think that it would work out very well. They would automatically think that a type of person that I am, or being a Satanist, that I would have this negative attitude or this negative energy, and I really don't.
Not all Satanists have such squeaky clean cover stories. Certainly not Pele, another member of Lucifer's Den.
Let's say you have somebody who is a stripper, who's involved in pornography. The question is, are they a victim or are they a messenger? Chances are they're both.
I am a Satanist. I'm also a stripper. Well, Satanism and stripping kind of go hand in hand because Satanism deals with the carnal, which my job also deals with the carnal.
Many people are attracted to pornography, sex, and so forth, out of curiosity or out of sheer joy and pleasure. In the satanic movement, pornography is very, very prevalent, very common.
In fact, I have been thinking about starting my own online computer satanic porn. I think that would be quite attractive to the public.
This is a means to make a lot of money. And who's going to be involved in it? Criminals, Satanists.
Satanists usually love money and power. And as a stripper, I do get enough money, somewhere around 200 to 300 a day, except some days are bad. Some days we have slow days. I think Satanism is just loving life and enjoying the sweet things in life, and I think that sex is one of those sweet things.
These are the more beautiful women who have been used in the past and are being used today through the mind control program that's practiced by the CIA, designed to make human robots out of these individuals. Give them orders, and they may not even know afterwards that they have committed a crime.
Hail Satan. Hail Satan.
Although all Satanists ally themselves with the Prince of Darkness, they don't always agree on everything. Recently, the Syndicate of the 5 Points was torn apart by a philosophical battle which is yet to be resolved.
Quite frankly, I'm sick and tired of organizations that have tried to make Satanism moral.
Raven Enterprises did leave the Syndicate of the 5 Points. Some of our basic tenets, our philosophy, did not coincide with their actual beliefs.
How the fuck could he put a satanic flyer saying that we are not anti-Christian? That's almost like saying we are not anti-stupid.
Lucifer's Den is... that's like the acceptable form of Satanism. You know, what I've talked about tonight, as far as I'm concerned, that's the real form of Satanism.
I don't think that Satanism has to be that blasphemous.
I hate God.
That's not what we're about. That's not where our focus is.
And apparently we didn't have the same ideals, and we spoke and we had arguments afterwards. You know, he would probably see them as mild, but I kind of took them personally. I decided to post a certain cartoon that was kind of, I guess, offensive to him.
In this cartoon, it displays several different frames in which I'm standing there and I'm telling my philosophy, and in the background we have the figure of Satan vomiting and being sick at some of the things that I'm saying. And basically saying that my philosophy is not what Satanism truly is.
And I made fun of him with his own words. I slapped him in the face with a cartoon.
He just started saying, take it down, and we're going to kick you out, you know, and so forth. And to act in that way is a bit childish, you know, to me to begin with.
I'd like to kill him because essentially he's really brought Satanism into a bad aspect.
I mean, I don't talk to him anymore, and, you know, I don't have any hard feelings. You know, he does what he's going to do and go on with our lives. I'm not going to, you know, lose sleep over it.
Whatever the real threat of these Satanists to society at large, former Special Agent Gunderson remains ever vigilant in his fight against evil, no matter what his enemies might throw in his path.
I have a little note here. and it was left on my rearview mirror while we were conducting this interview. And here's what it says: hello, H-E-L-L-O-W. I would like to know if you sail this truck. Truck is spelled T-R-O-C-K, and the K is in the form of kind of like a goat head. It's two at the top and a bottom coming down. This could be a subliminal message, and it could be a trap, or it could be a trick for me to call these two numbers, and they would have what we call a lock on my phone so they know where I'm calling from. I won't pay any attention to that at all, believe me.
Last week, we introduced you to visionary artist Paul Lawfully and his plans for a time machine and a vegetable house grown from a single seed. This week, Lawfully discusses his masterpiece, Thanaton 3, a painting he claims is alive.
The painting depicts an extraterrestrial's exhortation to me, explaining how to, 1, link life to death in a continuous experience, 2, utilize the resulting thanatonic energy to travel faster than the speed of light, turn mass into consciousness and back again, alter evolution at will, and exist simultaneously at every moment of time. 3, move the entire universe into the fifth dimensional realm and say when in history it is possible for this to happen. I have also received other information I cannot understand. Since this information was given to me directly, but not for me per se, it must be communicated to others, many of whom are better prepared than I to receive it. Accordingly, I was also shown how to make the painting into a psychotronic or consciousness mass interactive device, which is activated by approaching the painting, stretching out your arms, touching the upright hands, and staring into the eye. By doing this, new information will come to you through the active use of the divine proportion, which is the proportion of life connecting to death.
Paul, this painting, Thanaton 3, which you completed in 1989, is probably your most famous work. Why do you think that this piece has become so representative of your paintings?
Well, I think it contains most of the imagery that I've used and probably will continue to use. The Great Pyramid, things to do with the near-death experience, UFOs, the images of aliens, my theories of history, and, of course, that it is participatory.
When you say it's participatory, what do you mean?
Well, it essentially is a way in which you can use the imagery almost machine-like, but not quite. And by touching it, by looking at it, by projecting your own energy on it, it will respond to you.
Well, in most of your work, you present schematics and plans for unbuilt devices, for living architecture like your vegetable house. But Thanaton 3 is different because, in this case, it's not a plan to build something. It is the thing itself. You claim that the painting is a psychoactive device.
It's a way of achieving communication, and I'm communicating with a higher dimensional realm. And it's really penetrating a surface. And that's what's meant by portaling. I would say to go from the fourth to the fifth dimensional realm, you can penetrate by a Mobius strip, you can penetrate by going through a surface, but you don't want to rupture either yourself or the surface in the process. It's like in the movie where somebody comes out of the movie or you go into the movie and you are not destroyed in the process. That's like passing through a dimensional portal. It is kind of like taking money out of a bank machine when you're looking at a screen and you're called upon to touch the screen. You do know that you can't go through the screen, but you do also know that there's something behind the screen that's organizing the experience that you have. This operates in basically the same way. Only in this case, the payoff is not money, but a type of knowledge, a type of transformative knowledge, a knowledge which will literally bring you for an instant into the fifth dimensional realm. It boils down to understanding dimensionality in a way that's not necessarily mathematical, not necessarily religious, not necessarily philosophical, but has subsumed all three.
For many of us, Halloween only comes once a year, but not for the glamorous night crawlers of LA's Fetish Ball. For them, it's a lifestyle.
Out of the closet, then the annual Los Angeles Fetish Ball is the place for you.
What is your fetish? Doing stuff that nobody else does, being Satan. It's a nasty job, but someone's got to do it. This is true.
The Fetish Ball is the place to see and be seen by the Bohemian Night.
Life and blood is these exotic costumes, and who makes them, what they lead to. It's really an art.
I think people who are in this scene are very comfortable with their own, not only sexuality, but with their own being. So there's really no pretenses involved here. It's out in the open. This is it. This is what we enjoy, and this is what we do. So yes, it is a very friendly environment.
Oh, this is very true. The scariest looking people are the nicest, is the way it always works out. What it just crawled up in your pants one day. And it's cool to be a school teacher during the day and come let loose at night. That's the best part, seeing people you recognize in their daily lives and kind of going, whoa.
I actually started out to lose weight.
You got into fetish.
Hi there, this is Raymond Wiley from Disinformation. We're out here today at the Georgia Guidestones in Elberton, Georgia. It's about 70 miles outside of Atlanta. And as you can see here, it's 17-foot tall, strange granite monument that has 10 guidelines printed on it or etched into it about what to do after the shit hits the fan, as it were, and the apocalypse comes. We're going to take a short tour of the Guidestones today. We're going to talk a little bit about its history, and we're going to show you just the area around here and also some of the vandalism that's been done on the Guidestones in the past 2 years. We'll take a walking tour of that as well. They were built in the late 1970s, around about 1979, 1980. The project was funded and created by a man who went by the name R.C. Christian. That was his pseudonym. R.C. Christian's an interesting fellow because apparently he has some sort of Cold War fears, nuclear hang-up perhaps, that's made him decide that he wants to create, well, what is essentially a giant Rosetta Stone. Though it does have these 10 guidelines on it, I think what is as important as that is the fact that they're printed in the 8 most popular modern languages. No one knows exactly who R.C. Christian was, but it's known that he was backed up by a small group of men and that he was maybe a level of about $250,000 to $300,000. This is the English face of the Georgia Guidestones, and of course the easiest way for you to get a good reading on what the different guidelines are that R.C. Christian laid out for his monument. The first one here at the top is the one that is the most controversial. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. This is a real sticking point for a lot of the folks that research this monument. It reminds us of people like Thomas Malthus, who used to say that the population was just going to grow and grow and that we were all like basically a cancer on the earth. And I think, in fact, cancer on the earth is down here on the 10th guideline. So that's caused a lot of controversy over the stones, and we'll go through some of the other ones in a minute, but I mean, as an example of this controversy, you can see here the face is heavily damaged. And this staining actually comes from epoxy that was thrown, a bucket actually of epoxy that was thrown up here on this face of the stone. And if you look at the language, it's very reminiscent of, well, what I would define as like late 1970s Ted Turner environmentalism. It's got very much that kind of quality to it. And lots of mentions of nature, nature, nature. Like I said, it seems to capture that environmentalist spirit very well. It's interesting that the third guideline here, it says unite humanity with a new living language. As I said before, they serve as sort of a Rosetta Stone more than anything else. The Georgia Guidestones Monument, which is owned by Elbert County, was dedicated March 22nd, 1980, and since has remained a source of mystery and intrigue to its numerous visitors and those who learn of it from afar. Well, I think that's a good way to segue into talking a little bit about some of the astronomical alignments that you'll find in the Georgia Guidestones. If you look here, you'll see that there's what they call the male slot here along the middle of the central pillar. That's meant to mark the equinox and the solstices. You can observe them rising through that hole in the morning on those days of the year. And I think that has to do with the way the angles are cut going into the male slot. So you can line yourself up on one side or the other to see the sunrise. There's also, if you look up into the capstone, you'll see a vertical hole that tracks the North Star, the movement of the North Star each day of the year. So any day of the year you can observe the North Star through the Georgia Guidestones. Those are just a few of the astronomical alignments that you'll find here on the stones. And once again, it's almost like a Swiss Army knife for the people of the future, right? You can translate the languages of the past if they've fallen into disuse or if there are no written records left. You can track the equinoxes, you can know when the seasons are, exactly when the seasons are changing, follow the course of the stars. Things that men have been doing for thousands and thousands of years and that we often forget in our modern society. And I think the Guidestones are a great reminder of these things and also a great example of the kinds of things ancient people would do when they would build these megalithic structures. They're not always maybe as grandiose as you might think, but people can do great things even within their own means. And I think R.C. Christian's monument here is a great example of that. Let's walk around a little and look at the flagstone for a moment. So this is the flagstone for the monument, and it does a good job of just explaining the different astronomical alignments, as well as telling you what different languages, if you don't already know, are printed on the different stones. They also translate the message on the capstone. Let these be guide stones to an age of reason. Also explains the physical size of the monument, and has a few interesting places over here. If you look, there's a mention of a time capsule here on the flagstone that's actually never been laid. The idea was that the people of Elberton would come together, or perhaps the school children of Elberton would come together and lay a time capsule here at some point, and it just never has happened. So a lot of times people will come and visit the monument and think that there's whole other layer of the mystery about this time capsule, because as you can see, the text is just sort of left blank at the end of the line. So there's actually nothing under this flagstone, well, at least nothing that I know of. But that hasn't kept treasure hunters and conspiracy theorists from coming out here and taking their shovels to the flagstone. If you look all the way around, you can see that the outer edge of this flagstone is clearly visible almost all the way around. If you had come out here 2 or 3 years ago, this flagstone would have seemed to sit in the ground almost. You wouldn't have been able to hardly see any of the edges of it. The monument was completely pristine and untouched up until just after the election of Barack Obama in November of 2008. Apparently the people who have it out for this monument, who believe that it somehow represents a Malthusian New World Order, their rage bubbled up right after the Obama election, as it often does after any election, whether it be a Democrat or a Republican. And we saw the damage with the epoxy to the side of the English face, which I talked a little bit about earlier. And if you'd come around here, there's also been graffiti, which you can see sort of evidence of where it's been covered up all over the guide stones. And this started off very typical sort of anti-New World Order rhetoric and slogans, much like you would see in the films of Alex Jones and others. In fact, many of the quotes graffitied on the guide stones at the time came directly from the Alex Jones film Endgame, which we also happen to publish here at Disinformation. It's been this sort of thing basically since 2008, and it's only stopped since they've taken the time and money to clean up the guide stones. And they've also, if you look just down over the parking lot across there, you'll see the cameras that they've set up, and it says they're always on. So apparently the police have to take a much closer look at the monument now and sort of keep an eye on it. Why Elberton? Why build this strange monument here out in the middle of nowhere in eastern Georgia? We're not too far from South Carolina here. We're in the very deep South, and these sorts of ideas, well, you just really don't hear them kicked around in these kinds of neighborhoods. Elberton is the, quote, granite capital of the world. More granite monuments are produced here than I think in any other city anywhere in the world. I think that's probably had a lot to do with why R.C. Christian chose this location, chose this area. Because remember, he's on a budget. He's not a Rothschild or a Rockefeller. He doesn't have infinite resources. So he's got to go to where the granite is. And if we look at the size of these stones, it would be very hard to transport them very far. So the quarry is literally, the pyramid quarry where they were built is literally just 10 miles away. And even the process of moving them just from the quarry to here was very difficult. So you can see why, just for practical reasons, you'd end up in a place like Elberton. Now, many people theorize that there are perhaps some ley lines, or that this was the center of Indian territory, or something like that back in the day, or maybe it's on the 33rd degree parallel. We are actually fairly close to the 33rd degree parallel here, but before you get too excited, just know that R.C. Christian was given 3 sites to choose from here in Elberton, 3 different locations where he could put his stones. And this is the one that he chose. It was based on what real estate was available at the time, not necessarily the presence of any ley lines or telluric currents or anything like that. Although you do feel a little weird energy when you're out here sometimes. Who was this man of mystery? Nobody really knows who he was. There are anecdotal stories that he said his mother came from Georgia, and that was perhaps why he chose to build the monument here. He publishes his book, Common Sense Renewed, out of a publishing company in Iowa, so I've often wondered perhaps he's from there. But more importantly than where he's from is, what does he represent? You know, is he perhaps a Rosicrucian, a member of something like the AMORC or another modern incarnation of the Rosicrucians? In case you don't know who the Rosicrucians were, they were this sort of 17th century esoteric fraternity. They're the forerunners of Freemasonry. They're the first secret society, right? And actually, it's not even known whether they even existed at first. They announced themselves through manifestos printed in Germany in around about 1608. And they called for the greater reformation of the whole wide world, the inauguration of the Age of Reason that R.C. Christian keeps talking about in his monument. And it's funny that he picked that name, right? Because the central mythical figure of the Rosicrucian story is Christian Rosenkreuz. We see how much similarity there is between the name R.C. Christian and Christian Rosenkreuz. This could, in fact, just be a coincidence. It could be that Robert Christian or R.C. Christian just chose this name by coincidence or just in an arbitrary way. He often signs his name, in fact, Robert Christian, not R.C. Christian. But I personally, I do believe that he probably was a member of a Rosicrucian or other New Agey sort of fraternity of men. But they probably weren't very big or very powerful. Like I said, this is about a $300,000 project. Let's talk a little bit about what the Guidestones mean. My friend Austin Gandy, he co-hosts the Disinformation podcast with me. He calls them a prison of meaning, and I thought that was a perfect analogy for what they are. You know, it's sort of like in The Empire Strikes Back. You know, Luke looks into the cave or the dark area, and he says to Yoda, you know, what's in there? You know, and what does Yoda say? He says, of course, only what you take with you. The Guidestones are very much the same way. I mean, people bring with them the meaning that they want to have before they get here oftentimes. They come here to protest, or they come here to see what they think is a great or terrible thing, you know, either way. It's very strange. There are a few people that, though, I find that have a very positive view of the Guidestones, which I do. I think building a monument like this was a wonderful way for a man to leave something behind that would really last, and something that would make a positive message about where the world is going, and make a statement about what's wrong with the world now in a lot of ways. If the Guidestones survive, if they're not pulled down by some redneck with his Hemi, I hope they go on to be a historical monument here in Georgia. I think they should be classed as a historical monument, perhaps one of the very first historical monuments that will mark the period of the late Cold War. The early 80s, the early Reagan years, the last nuclear scare, basically. And as I've said many times before, they are more than anything a monument to our Cold War fears, and a stark reminder of the fact that we have the power in our hands to completely destroy each other. And we can choose to do that, or we can choose not to. Hopefully these Guidestones will never have to be used for the reason that they were designed, and hopefully they can just sort of stand here as a reminder of where we could go and not where we are.
Mind control, time travel, and Nazi gold. That's just the tip of the iceberg and the granddaddy of all conspiracy theories, the Montauk Project. We asked Preston B. Nichols, author of the Montauk Project book series, to take us behind the scenes.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Preston B. Nichols, author of the Montauk Project. I'm a professional metaphysician and a professional consultant engineer in the electronics industry.
Preston B. Nichols is the man who blew the whistle on the weirdest conspiracy theory of all time, the Montauk Project.
We're in the Montauk Project investigation vehicle.
In his books and frequent lectures at UFO conferences, Nichols faces ridicule, and worse, to spread the word about the project he describes as beyond science fiction.
They'd turn the machine on. It would literally transport me back to 9 that morning and like superimpose me over me at 9 in the morning. I'd have the whole day to work over again. Of course, the first pass would become a whole different quantum reality.
This is Stuart Swerdlow, New Age healer and father of 6. When Stuart saw Preston Nichols lecture on the Montauk Project, his repressed memories of the project surfaced as well.
Understand a couple of things about the project. Since the late 1940s and early 50s, the government has had the capacity to what I call bend time, or travel through dimensional aspects of time, so that you can take someone at 12:01 from a particular location. They could spend weeks with you, and then you can return them at 12:01.1, so it looks like no time has passed.
The Montauk Project is alleged to have occurred on a decommissioned Air Force station on the northeasternmost tip of New York's Long Island, in a sleepy fishing town known as Montauk Point. Here, in an underground bunker, a vast operation straight out of the X-Files was taking place.
I wouldn't say they were conventional military, they were kind of behind-the-scenes military. Okay. There were also alien groups involved there, and there were also individuals involved there who I, for lack of a better term, would say were involved in Nazi activity.
Meet Alexandra Bruce, former MTV producer and paranormal investigator. Her interest in the Montauk Project books led her to attend one of Preston Nichols' lectures.
When I started interviewing people who had claims of being involved in the project, they started telling me that I was involved in this or the other: sex projects, genetic engineering experiments, time travel experiments, mind control experiments, and but different people who didn't really have communication with each other were each telling me things that sometimes agreed with each other and sometimes did not agree.
But what exactly was the Montauk Project? A device called the Montauk Chair was used to focus the energies of a sexually aroused psychic who could create an interdimensional vortex that would allow for time travel and access to parallel dimensions.
It's almost like a dimensional doorway where gold and submarines and equipment, military equipment, can be shunted around between universes.
The goal of the project was to send military operatives back in time to alter key historical events. This would allow Montauk's Nazi overlords to hold the future captive and manipulate reality itself.
Because the project is nothing more and nothing less than high-tech black magic.
I was sent through the portal with a pistol, and my goal was to actually kill the Christ figure. And what happened was, when I saw him coming down the steps of the temple, I couldn't do it. I ran away. They sent me back when he was up on the cross, and my goal then was to extract vials of blood from his body, which I did do, and I did bring them back.
Was the idea to bring about a forced apocalypse?
What? No, he was supposed to, they were going to take the blood, clone the blood, basically shoot up Duncan with, replace all his blood with the clone blood of Christ. Then he'd board a craft, fly from Mars to here, land, proclaim himself Christ, say that he's Christ returned. What would happen is the medical people would take a sample of his blood and compare it to a blood sample from the Shroud of Turin. And they say genetically it's the same.
If the tales of the Montauk Gang seem a little hard to follow, perhaps the conspiracy conceals a far more simple truth.
I was interviewing a young man last year who also claims to have been part of the Antichrist Project, which is what it was known as. And he is a Satanist and very messed up, I believe, by a lot of multidimensional weirdness, including certain deprogramming work that was done on him by Preston, and I do have my problems with that whole scenario.
I have the ability through my empathic or empathy to literally be able to scan and look into a human being.
They involved masturbating young men a lot with the help of, I think, certain radionic devices, and then questioning them, like inquisitioning them in that kind of a scenario.
Let me ask you this. If you have this ability, look at me and tell me what you see.
I can't just look at you. I literally have to feel your aura and your frequencies and scan them. I do it through hand scans. It has to be close on.
Stuart Swerdlow underwent these sexual deprogramming techniques employed by Preston, and he's personally told me that there are other and better ways to deprogram than this way.
And there's been a very small group of people who actually have gone through a series of deprogrammings, which I teach them how to do their own. I don't do it for them, and they have been helped greatly by it.
It did work, and it did get Stuart on the road to recovering his memories and his self, if you will, and his sanity. And he, to this day, maintains a degree of gratitude for having worked with Preston. You know, it's just, it's a little invasive, to say the least.
Hey guys, come on in. Take a look around. I'm Preston.
And I think it's really no big leap to concoct this whole thing as a very warped and twisted, closeted homosexual come-on. There's no doubt in my mind that it really can look like that very easily. He has no interest in doing it with me. I'll tell you that.
From Metropolis to Blade Runner, the possibility of a robot rebellion has haunted the popular imagination. But once mankind's out of the picture, how would the robots reproduce? Animator Mike Sullivan has a few ideas.
I guess I've been going to the flea market for like 15 years. I started going there and buying like watch parts and stuff like that to use in models, you know, for robotic stuff. When I'm finding Barbies or G.I. Joes or robot, you know, things, I don't want them to be too loose, or, you know, I don't care if they're banged up or the hair is cut off and stuff, because I gotta trim them anyway. And some of them I just use for parts. You have Barbies with hingeable legs?
You help? A longer hair. I feel it
Right.
vachement bien.
Yeah, that's what you do with them. Well, I gotta cut all the hair off. Is that 3? I found about maybe, I don't know, 75, 100 hinged posable figures of all kinds. I moved in 69. It's more like a warehouse than a decorated place. I mean, it's decorated with junk from movies and still photos and prop stuff that a lot of the stuff here I handmade, which makes it painful to throw out. And I've thrown out a bunch of it, but there's still way too much stuff. Yeah, most Barbies are resculpted. You sand them down, add a little to the cranium and cover up the ears and put a straight nose on it and big robot jaw. You can smooth it out with a spit. And then it's the paint job is starts usually black enamel. So I can get a little silver highlighting.
I'm not a writer at all, but I wrote about the robots in a munitions factory, and I got fed up with it, and I just thought, oh, I'll do a porno movie of robots, and that won't need any plot, you know. This is Madame Robot's artificial insemination machine, and she has her on lever, and then this sort of half android comes down and grabs her. And the cock isn't attached to him, but it comes out like that, back and forth. And it's a jizzing bottle up here that comes in at the right time. And this guy turns the generator. The sperms have been ejaculated into the fallopian tubes, and they're on a hunt for eggs. Oh, and these sperms, they can't even wait for the eggs. They're like fucking each other. Robot sperms fucking robot eggs, and then you know, egg dividing and forming a baby robot, and then a robot birth. I haven't really incorporated any, you know, of my own sex life into this. I don't, you know, it doesn't equate. It's not funny enough. It's like human porn movies, you know, where they're like fucking for display, and it is kind of cold, you know. It isn't a love story. The only reason they need to have sex is because it's like a parallel human universe, you know, made of robots that, you know, ape human stuff.
Do you ever get horny when you're making these?
It doesn't get you very hot, actually. And I don't think it'll get the audience very hot either. You know, well, you never know. There could be some perv cases out there.
Wherever we go these days, there's no escaping the watchful eye of the security camera. But the fact that Big Brother's tracking our every move doesn't seem to bother political protest group, the surveillance camera players. They're not just watching the watchers, they're performing for them.
Almost all of our plays center around a board such as this, which captures as simply as possible a phrase and an image. So even if the person can't speak English, they could somehow get to the idea of what it is that we're expressing.
But what are you trying to accomplish with the surveillance camera players?
We're trying to accomplish at least a couple of things at once. First and foremost, we want to stimulate a debate about whether surveillance cameras should be allowed to proliferate everywhere in city spaces. That's the surveillance camera where, I should say, we're in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral on Fifth Avenue in Midtown, one of the most famous areas in New York. And this church, very famous church, is ringed by surveillance cameras, and the joke that this play presents is that that surveillance camera is not watched by a New York City policeman, but by God, him or herself. When we come out here, we're looking to talk to people, and even if they're hostile or they don't understand, it's very important for us to talk to them and try to make clear what it is that we're doing here. In this area of town, these people, whether they know it or not, are surveilled almost every step of the way, especially in Midtown, and especially just pretty much west of here. There are about 139 cameras in a 10 block by 10 block range, which means that the average person here, and just walking from here to the subway or the car or a cab, would be seen by at least 2 or 3 different systems. And it's important to at least alert them to that fact. We first did a play called Ubuhra, and that was on December 10th of '96 in a subway station in New York City. But it was in January and February of '98 that the city began to install surveillance cameras in Washington Square Park and in housing authorities and other areas, and it's as if that history sort of caught up with us. We already had a group that was interested in surveillance and video cameras, and it was just then being a public topical interest. I told you they'd be here. You're here for the commercial break. We're a group that protests surveillance cameras by doing satirical plays in front of them. Instead of either just writing a letter to my congressman and saying, I'm opposed to this camera, congressman, that would be what a standard leftist would do. An anarchist might climb up here at night and destroy the surveillance camera. In between those two extremes, and I consider both sorts of behavior really rather extreme and both rather ineffective ultimately, we're in the middle. We're taking a tool that we consider oppressive, an aspect of totalitarianism, and diverting it for means that are pleasurable and subversive. It goes back to being a surveillance camera when we're done. Now, wasn't that exciting? I hope you got all of that. You got that and more.
Welcome to Disinformation. I'm Richard Metzger. In the 1960s, the birth control pill ushered in the sexual revolution. Today, as plastic surgery becomes more and more affordable, is medical science setting the stage for a gender revolution? Don't look now, but the battle of the sexes just got a lot more complicated.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
I think it's because it's something new.
These are just men who are exploring.
Men get bored very easily.
Everybody has their own wacky, wild stuff they do.
Something prettier.
Anything that's new and unexplored will be of interest. And when it comes to a man, sexuality, I mean, they just can't be fulfilled ever.
They run into a transsexual and it starts from there.
4, arms down.
Blame RuPaul or even Jerry Springer if you want. Lately, she-males seem to be popping up everywhere you turn. And although transgenderism isn't exactly the newest thing on the cultural radar screen, chicks with dicks are starting to show up in some rather surprising places, most notably in the pages of mainstream men's pornographic magazines.
Why do you think they are marketing she-male porn to their presumably heterosexual male readers?
Well, all of their readers obviously aren't quite heterosexual. And the guys who they're marketing to are people who have come out of the 90s masturbation culture, guys who have seen so much porno and so many sex acts performed by strangers that another person's penis is no longer a threat to them.
What does the consumer of she-male porn want? What is the itch that they're looking to satisfy?
And most of the guys that rent straight film are into just looking at beautiful women, and when they rent a transsexual video, that satisfies both their little horniness or kinkiness or interests, because they get a beautiful woman, and except she has something different, a little girl with a weenie.
Some guys get off different ways. Some guys have foot fetishes, and we think that's weird. I think that's weird. What makes other people think that transsexuals is any different than that, you know?
Most of the people that purchase and rent my productions are straight.
I think there's no question that masturbation is a bit like taking heroin or anything else which is addictive. Then it's also true of visual pornography. And so I think it is important to be honest and say there's an element of being jaded, an element of needing to go further, to still get a kick, to still feel one is doing something taboo.
She-males give them the best of both worlds. They give them the hyper-femininity of someone who's striving to be a female, and all the attendant sexual charge that comes along with that.
Suddenly, we can actually see the creature that we have almost manifested through these ongoing sexual fantasies and desires. And so I would argue that this whole event has been invoked by many, many masturbatory fantasies. That when you have millions of men secretly eroticizing the idea of a woman with a penis, that in the end, based on the rules of sexual magic, that would occur. One manifests that which one truly desires.
Is a man attracted to a transsexual woman a straight thing or a gay thing?
I think it all depends on what the guy wants to do sexually. You know, because obviously from my waist down, I'm not a woman.
I think a gay man wants to be with another man. You know, we might have penises that we're still more feminine than most men. Well, there's not a word for it, really. It wouldn't be considered heterosexual, because that's male and female. No gay man wants to go and rent a transsexual porn.
Having anal sex with a transsexual doesn't make you gay.
The widespread visibility of the transsexual revolution has society reeling, but the gender confusion plays both ways, as most transsexuals consider themselves heterosexual women.
I had a guy, and we've been seeing each other, and he just, you know, we were hanging out, and it just came down to where he asked me if he can go down on me. And I didn't feel comfortable with it, but then I told them, well, I thought you were, you know, straight, you know, and he said, well, what does that make me? Does that make me gay? Or it makes me feel not feminine for a guy to try to go down on me, you know? It makes me feel like it's a waste of time of me trying to look this good. I'd rather a guy like me because I look like a girl than because the guy would like me because I have what I have between my legs. That, to me, makes him gay, and I couldn't be with someone like that.
People have difficulty changing their hairstyle. They feel a little uncomfortable. Imagine changing your complete earth suit to a whole other gender. You have to deal with your family. So many people go through their whole life, nothing to do with transsexualism, living a miserable life because they can't change something because they're afraid of their family, you know? And there's so many transsexuals out there with low self-esteem that don't realize just the fact that they get up in the morning, put a dress on, put their makeup on, and go out shopping. Right there, they have, like, you know, They've done something so big that not that many people would do in their life.
There is no question in my mind that the idea of the transsexual and the hermaphrodite is coming of age. That what was once an alchemical obscurity is now a street-level reality. It's a stage towards true evolution. That in fact, as a species, being binary, male and female, is incredibly primitive, and that becoming hermaphroditic and asexual has to be incredibly vital to us becoming an interesting species. Even the Pope said this year that God must contain all which is female and all that is male. And this is all part of the march towards becoming pure consciousness. So the transsexual and the she-male are barometers of that which is inevitable and necessary for us to return to our divine source. And this is not blasphemy. I believe this actually was the intention of the universe when it began.
Welcome to Disinformation. I'm Richard Metzger. In tonight's first story, you'll meet New York art maverick Kembra Fowler. Whether she's fronting her rock band or walking the runway, Kembra embraces contradiction, blurring the line between life and art, pleasure and pain, terror and beauty.
Kembra Fowler is a rock star, wrestler, Calvin Klein model, and the mastermind behind the legendary freak show known as the voluptuous horror of Karen Black.
I grew up in a small surfing town in Southern California, and all the other kids were swimming and tanning, and I used to like to watch horror films. I always admired Karen Black. When I watched her in her films, like, I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. She was very strange looking, beautiful, and horrifying at the same time.
After high school, Kembra traveled to Europe, a trip that would have a profound influence on her art.
I visited Vienna, Austria, where I saw for the first time pictures from the Vienna Action Group, and there were Rudolf Schwarzkogler pictures, Otto Mule, Hermann Nietzsche, and those were some of the most intense pictures that I'd ever seen in my life. And I really identified with, like, Schwarzkogler's body mutilations, you know, with him wrapped in bandages and just like doing insane things to his body, kind of like turning this kind of pain into a beautiful picture.
Returning to the States, Kembra became a leading figure in New York's outrageous performance art scene.
I started some of the first performances that I did at that time, like the performance I do where I stand on my head and crack the egg on my vulva. That was basically, essentially, the first performance art piece that I ever did. I started doing the costume Abracadabra, which is the one where I tie the strings to my labia and sort of quack like a duck. That's a good one. I feel like I look sort of like a moth with my arms outstretched, attached to my labia like this. That was a real hit. At that time, I started doing a piece where I walk on top of bowling balls. I strap bowling balls to my feet and walk on them. That had come from this drawing of a witch that had been persecuted, and they used to tie and torture these people by taping balls to their feet. So, of course, like, employing availism, like I did, I found bowling balls one afternoon walking home, and I taped them to my feet in my show. Karen Black started like around 1990, and basically what we wanted to do was score our own performances and our own films. We decided to combine all of the things that we'd been working on visually with our performance art, with the costumes that I'd been wearing all of my life. Everything sort of like merged. All of the mediums merged together, and we really wanted to make an act that we could take on the road and tour around with. And doing rock and roll and starting the voluptuous horror of Karen Black, that was a good way for us to get out of town. So, you know, we started to write songs, and each song had a little prop, and it had a costume, and it had a storyline in it. Everything within a 3-minute song in Karen Black had a very specific intention. The colors were thought out. The props that we used signified something that we were talking about. There was no randomness like in a successful magic spell. You have specific ingredients that you use to make your point and to make something beautiful. I made the movie called Sewing Circle at a time when I was experiencing a lot of body shame, and I was experiencing in my growth as a human being a lot of controversy with other people's feelings about like owning my very own body. I was so angry about the unacceptance of the loved ones around me that I decided to reclaim my very own body, and I sewed my vagina shut. On the other side of that coin, I simply thought that it would look good, which is also basically the sole motivation for why I do things in general. I mean, I always thought that to be naked, covered in body paint was something that looked very nice. My mother got very angry with me, and she asked me why I sewed my vagina shut. And I was trying to imagine what it was like for a mother to have a daughter who does such extreme things to themselves. And I just told my mother that I was very upset.
If you're bored to tears by MTV and corporate rock, then you're not alone. Tired of teen pop, boy bands, and electric guitars, music archaeologist Erwin Chusid took matters into his own hands and uncovered the weird world of outsider music, the new in sound from way, way out. What is outsider music?
Outsider music is music that exists outside the mainstream, done by people who are often self-taught.
Talk about the Taurus, talk about the bully bull bull. Talk about the Taurus, talk about the bully bull bull.
The two characteristics that I look for in outsider music are authenticity, sincerity, genuineness. They have to mean it.
We found out.
Can't be something done to be arch, to be mischievous. They're doing it because they're sincere about it. It's an honest artistic expression. The second thing I look for is lack of self-awareness. They really don't know how different their music is, how exotic it is, and how truly outside they are compared to the mainstream.
How did you become interested in the genre of outsider music?
By being a bit of an outsider myself, I've never really been a fully credentialed participant in mainstream society. I don't watch much TV and miss all the blockbuster movies and don't read the popular magazines, and I obviously have no interest in popular fashion and hairstyles. And I've always been drawn towards art and creativity on the margins. That's why I decided to write an entire book about the music that I've just become so fond of over the last 30 years.
Put your foot on the gas, you can go fast, and I want that 98. It has good standard equipment.
Oh, tell me about B.J. Snowden.
B.J. Snowden is a music teacher who lives up in Billerica, Massachusetts. Her piano playing's a little bit dodgy, her songwriting's kind of whack, her syllabification is inexact. Her enunciation is occasionally garbled, and she sings songs about Canada, or as she pronounces it, Canada. But she's wonderful to see because she has great charm, great spirit. There's a certain innocence about her, which is actually characteristic of a lot of outsiders. There's something almost childlike about BJ, the way she sings and performs, and this great sense of wonder about the world. Well, welcome to the couch potatoes section of the program here. I do a series at a club in New York called Incorrect Music Videos, where we play video examples of outsider music, such as Reverend Alicia here. She's an evangelist based somewhere in New York, I presume, and she sits there on camera on a chair that she picked up at Office Depot, over which she has draped some gold fabric. And she kind of sits there and sings songs about Yahweh, although it's on recording, so she doesn't lip sync. You know, I'm waiting for her to, there she goes, and she rotates. She kind of swims. It's what I call interpretive flailing. She's doing what she's doing because she loves the Lord and she wants to share her religious fervor with her viewers. And she also wants to share, obviously, her special effects generator as well. From the heart of the heartland, out in Iowa, we have Mark and Lois Kennis from their local public access show called Big People News. Lois is into the blues. She actually can only play one blues riff, in fact. And here's her husband, Mark. He's doing a song called Lazy and Crazy here, but it really gets crazy when he takes off his glasses, and then things get a little frightening.
I'm lazy and crazy. I'm lazy and crazy.
Mark was actually arrested for growing marijuana on his property and is currently out on probation.
Crazy.
Kids, just be aware, drugs could do this to you.
I'm lazy and crazy.
And now, Disinformation is proud to present the world premiere of B.J. Snowden's stirring anthem in Canada.
The city's very clean, you see.